Regan Slaymaker for Radiant.Green. I have the pleasure to be joined by Tom Callow. Tom, how are you today?
Yeah, fine, thank you, Regan. I'm very good to talk to you today.
You too, likewise. So just to start off with, you're the head of corporate communications at Myenergi. I think we'll jump straight into it. So we'll start with kind of what do you do and how do Myenergi contribute to decarbonising the energy space?
As head of corporate communications at Myenergi, a lot of what I do is working with government, policy, and regulators to look at how the market's evolving. So I get quite involved in how the sort of landscape of the industry is evolving. And at Myenergi, we're a relatively young company still. So we were founded in 2016 by Lee Sutton and Jordan Brompton. Our most famous product is the Zappi solar EV charger. So we've made the world's first dedicated solar EV charger to make the most of solar energy to charge electric cars. Lots of others have obviously followed that now. And we're really about maximizing sort of energy consumption in the home in a way that benefits the consumer. So that's maximizing the sort of use of microgeneration, solar energy primarily for customers. Some customers do have wind generation and hydro, and also to smart charge their electric vehicles and batteries as well. So it's all about maximizing energy in the home for the benefit of the consumer, and also working kind of in symbiosis with the grid, basically, to make sure that electric vehicles and new electric technologies don't become a sort of a negative for the grid. They're a positive, basically, on the grid.
Perfect. From what you were saying, a kind of about unlocking benefits through smart charging. That moves perfectly into kind of the sponsored panel Myenergi have at the event, titled "On the Plus Side: Smart Charging and the EV Consumer Benefits." You were just about to touch on it there, but why is smart charging a key process to unlocking EV consumer benefits?
So smart charging is really important for the kind of connection between electric vehicles and the grid. A lot of people might, who don't necessarily drive electric cars might worry that, everyone's going to bring their electric cars home. They're all going to plug them in if they have home charging, and they're all going to be charging at exactly the same time. So we're going to have, 20 million cars all charging at the maximum rate. I mean, that simply doesn't happen because people have different lives. They don't charge every day, etc. But even when there are a lot of vehicles actually connected and plugged in, and they might all be charging at the same time, for example, maybe to take advantage of cheap overnight energy tariffs. What smart charging means is that basically those charging sessions can be scheduled, potentially paused and delayed in such a way as to manage the load on the grid, but without negatively impacting the consumer. So the average customer probably only needs a couple of hours of charging every night to do their daily mileage, and actually they won't be doing a full charge all the way overnight. So as long as they get their charge during the night at some point, they won't mind when it happens, as long as they're benefiting from those rates. So smart charging allows the grid to stay balanced and not exceed obviously load limits, and also load limits within the home. But it also benefits the customer because they can take advantage of cheaper tariffs, and also with things like demand side response, which we're involved in at Myenergi. It's about saying, well, actually, if you opt in to say delay your charging or pause your charging for maybe half an hour overnight or an hour overnight, if there's some sort of grid constraint, you actually benefit as a consumer. So in the future, we see a market where you'll potentially be incentivized to do that. You'll be rewarded to take part in that process. So there's a big fear in certain parts of the media about electric vehicles and their kind of being a burden on the grid. And actually, the reality is that they're helping to drive renewable adoption, solar adoption, and also they will be able to be controlled in a much more smart way than we can control, let's say, fossil fuels today.
Perfect. I mean, all the benefits you mentioned there, kind of obviously enabling grid flexibility, kind of benefiting the customer not only through kind of the amount of energy they have, but also kind of they'll be getting a monetary incentive as well with the smart charger with smart chargers. Is that, in your view and Myenergi's view, kind of the key factors that would increase the rollout of smart chargers?
I think obviously in the UK we've got legislation now that all private charge points have to be smart to a certain extent. Some still aren't. There's still some allowances from the regulator, which is a bit disappointing that some chargers are being allowed to be sold that are not smart. But as at Myenergi, the Zappi certainly is compliant with smart charging regulations. But really, if you're a consumer, you really want a smart charger like the Zappi because actually it allows you to take advantage of the tariffs and the choices you have before you as a consumer to choose when to charge. You can take advantage of solar energy, even if you haven't got solar energy today and solar generation today. There's a huge growth, as you know, in solar domestic installations of solar energy. So even as a consumer, if you could get solar panels, let's say in a year's time, 2 years' time, 3 years' time, makes sense to invest in a solar compatible charger now, so you can actually integrate that when the time comes. So really, smart chargers are being driven by what the consumer wants, but there is some legislation there as well.
Perfect. And with that legislation, obviously, you did mention there, which I didn't know this, that kind of some chargers are still being able to be sold. But on the whole, with that legislation where all new chargers that are being sold have to be smart, is that a huge kind of innovation push for the landscape as well?
It's certainly one of the sort of most progressive piece of legislation globally. You know, the UK government has taken a view that they want to make chargers sort of more intelligent than perhaps other markets are making them at the moment. So, you know, it's much harder. The bar, if you like, barrier to entry into the UK market is higher, perhaps for some of the sort of cheaper players in the market to achieve coming into the UK than other markets they could enter without those sort of regulatory hurdles. So it is a higher bar and a higher technological threshold to meet. But we think it's the right idea. You know, our charger really didn't have to be modified too much to meet the regulations. The regulations were almost designed for chargers like the Zappi already. So other companies had to do much more development work than us to get their chargers to be like up to par. But we're really pleased our customer base have already benefited from a lot of the features and functionalities of the Zappi from day one, from when we started selling them back in 2017.
Fantastic. I do want to move on from kind of the specifics of kind of smart charging and things like that, but I do want to ask kind of an overarching question that is a key theme in the Charge EV Theatre this year. But in your view, or Myenergi's view, what is the key to unlocking mass EV uptake in the UK?
The number one thing related to EV adoption that you always hear in surveys and consumer panels about why people haven't yet got an electric car or are perhaps thinking that they might not get one in the next few years is really about cost. It's not actually about charging infrastructure. It's a bit of a red herring. There's huge amounts of charging infrastructure out there. The utilization rate's about 15% on average. Obviously, the majority of customers, not the vast majority, I should say, in the UK, but probably 50% will have access to home charging as well. So it's not really the charging infrastructure that is the actual barrier. It's more about cost of vehicles, cost of getting into one of these cars. Now, if you're a new car buyer, it's a no-brainer. There's great leasing deals available. There's great salary sacrifice deals available if you're a business driver or a company car driver. But if you're, for example, a used vehicle buyer, there are some really cheap electric cars out there now. You can get a Nissan Leaf or an early electric car like a Renault Zoe for maybe £3,000 to £5,000 that would suit most motorists' daily needs absolutely fine. But if you do want something larger or longer range, you are going to be looking at more sort of like 15, 16, 17,000 pounds for the cheapest kind of 250-mile range models. That's about the average price of a used car in the UK, actually, if you look at Auto Trader, but it's still a lot of money for a lot of people. So what we really need is for the market to keep on being driven by that new vehicle supply to drive down prices in the used market. So whenever you see these stories about used electric vehicle prices falling, that's good news for people who want to buy them in the used market. So actually, it's not a bad news story. It is a good news story overall. And it's a bit disappointing that we've had the news about the 2030 pushback date, because obviously that's going to potentially delay that new vehicle market. So the irony is that you might now be waiting longer. If you're a used car buyer waiting for a cheap used electric car, you might now be waiting longer as a result of that government announcement to buy your used electric car.
Okay, well, I was going to say, well, that news, I think there was a big annoyance to everyone in the news the other day, but I think everyone's kind of pushing forward to and focusing on positives, like the legislation we just said as well. My final question, Tom, thank you for joining me today for this interview. I thought I'd ask, where can people find Myenergi at the event, and why is it important for companies like Myenergi to be at Solar and Storage Live in Birmingham this year?
So if people want to find Myenergi at Solar and Storage Live this year, we're on stand G12. It's next to the cafe, so perfect chance to come and see us if you're grabbing a bite to eat or a drink. All of our product range will be there on display. So we've obviously got the Zappi EV charger. We've got our Eddy, the Solar Superhero Eddy power diverter, and also our latest product, the Libby, the home battery, which we actually launched at Solar and Storage Live last year. So we'll be providing a bit of an update on Libby and how that's going in terms of the rollouts. But it's a chance to see our whole portfolio and talk to our team about how these work in an ecosystem for customers. Solar and Storage Live for us is all about connecting with the installer community predominantly, and really letting them see how our ecosystem can help to empower consumers and their customers that are asking them for solar installations or battery installations, for example. So our message is really saying, look, if you've got customers coming to you and asking for an installation, think about what else could benefit that consumer. Because actually they might think they just want solar panels, but actually the reality might be that they want solar panels and a battery, and they might be thinking about an electric car in future as well. So it's really to get to the bottom of what the customer ecosystem could be, and not just thinking kind of one dimensionally about solar panels on the roof. It's what else can you offer that customer.
Perfect. Well, I mean, if that's not a reason to go and visit Myenergi, I don't know what is, Tom. But no, Tom Callow, thank you very much for joining Radiant.Green today. And yeah, looking forward to seeing you at Solar and Storage Live.
Pleasure to talk to you. Thanks, Regan. Cheers.